Welcome to Paddlecast with Betsy
and Billy. On Paddlecast, we talk to and about paddlers who are pushing the limits, paddlers who are pushing their own limits and pushing the limits of paddle sports.
In this week's news, we will talk about the ongoing world record attempt for the fastest circumnavigation of Britain by kayak. Then we've got a few race recaps from last weekend in the marathon world. This was the South African Marathon National Championships. And in the SUP world, we've also started seeing more sort of smaller international races and national championships and qualifying events. So we had the US National SUP Championships last weekend. There were 3 big ultra events last weekend. So we'll talk about those: the Texas Water Safari, the Loire 725, and the Eliminator. And then we'll do a short preview of the upcoming Nordhausen SUP race, which is the next event on the EuroTour SUP, and preview this week's European Sprint Championships. So let's start today with an update on Sebastian Szubski, who is currently 5 days and 374 kilometers into his attempt to break the world record for fastest circumnavigation of Britain by kayak. We spoke about Sebastian and his attempt at the end of last week's episode, so please do go back and listen to that if you haven't already. But wow, I think it's fair to say that even just over the last 5 days, Billy and I have both been pretty blown away by just how well he is going so far. And it looks like he has a very, we knew that he would have a pretty good shot at the record, but from what we've seen so far, this is really serious. He has a very serious shot at it.
Yeah, I think we said after 5 or 6 days we would have a clearer picture, and we're on day 5. He's gambled on a really big crossing today, but it's going to be really difficult to break Dougal's record, and at the moment, Sebastian is doing what's necessary. Dougal did 40 days 2 years ago now, and that was 27 days faster than the previous record set by Joe Leach, although that was in a sea kayak. So this is the sort of the new wave of surf skis doing the record. But I think Dougal brought a new approach to it that really changed it, didn't he?
Yeah.
But Dougal averaged 78 kilometers per day, spending 9.5 hours in the boat each day. He planned it perfectly, really, with starting up in Suffolk with northeasterlies and easterly winds forecast for the foreseeable future, and then took a calculated gamble that the prevailing southwesterlies would kick in sort of around the time he got to Cornwall, and it did. He then did get kind weather around Scotland, but he got hammered in that last week with headwinds. It was really hard. His average speed really dropped in that, but he just spent so long in the boat each day in those last sort of 5 or 6 days. But if anyone's going to have a good shot, Sebastian's a great candidate.
Yeah, and we know, of course, Mike Lambert, who did the circumnavigation in 2024, the year after Dougal, got incredibly unlucky with the weather. And that was part of why, he got stuck in Thurso for so long and up on that north coast of Scotland, and ended up taking 58 days to do the circumnavigation. But Mike Lambert has actually been advising Sebastian on his current circ attempt. And that's part of why Sebastian started with that Scottish coastline where the weather really blocked Mike's attempt last year. We were worried last week when we spoke about this that maybe it could be really hard for Sebastian to be starting this huge circ with such a difficult bit of coastline and some really, really hard days of paddling. He's now gone out and done those successfully, and I think it has been hard, but he's taken a rest day yesterday on Monday this week, and he is now attempting 105 kilometer crossing as we speak. I think he's just left. So by the time you're listening, hopefully he will have completed it.
If he's still out there when this goes live, Betsy, he's in trouble.
What do you think about that crossing?
It's a huge crossing, and it deserves more credit than it will get as just being part of a GB Circumnav. It's going to be the biggest crossing by a surfski without an escort boat done. It's really big. The conditions aren't perfect. He should have side waves if the forecast was correct. It's dying down, but there'll probably still be quite a sea running, and I imagine it's not very pleasant right now as we speak. It will get better, and actually the latest forecast this morning is suggesting that he'll finish with a steady headwind of about 10 knots, which isn't going to be pleasant. So it's going to be a real big boy day, and it's almost a shame we're recording now as opposed to 24 hours later, because I feel that if he gets through today well, then it really is game on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and this is the Moray Firth crossing, and he is aiming to go from Wick to, we think, Fraserburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Billy, as you say, so your crossing of the North Sea in December was 97 kilometers, just as a point of reference.
92?
Yep. You said Dougal's was slightly longer.
Dougal, I believe, currently has the longest crossing in a surfski unescorted. The Gulf of Taranto, which is from the toe to the heel of Italy at 103 kilometers. So it's close. Dougal's was in the Mediterranean, but Dougal does have diabetes, so there's a few other things. I mean, not that they need to be directly compared, but this is a big crossing. It's a serious undertaking.
Yeah, definitely. And it does give him, assuming all goes well today, fingers crossed, it does give him a pretty big boost. I know both of us have spoken extensively with Mike Lambert, who did his circumnavigation last year, and I reported on it pretty extensively for Paddle Daily and Paddler Media. You can go back through some of the old videos on YouTube where I spoke with Mike about it. And one of his big takeaways was about the distance covered. And Mike actually completed, even though it took him longer to complete his circ than Dougal, related in part to, in a huge part to the weather, he covered about 223 kilometers less on the water compared to Dougal. And he was able to shave off that distance by doing bigger crossings. So, part of why Sebastian will be out doing this big crossing today is because it saves him, time and distance from having to sort of go in along the coast before doing that crossing. So if he can, shave off big chunks of time and distance by doing these major crossings, if he's happy with it, if he's comfortable, that bodes well for the rest of his trip for sure, because this will only be the first of multiple major crossings.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very interesting to see if he gets the weather to do such a big crossing on the Thames estuary, yep. or see what he can do when he's crossing the Wash, from sort of Lancashire to, I believe it's Lancashire, sort of the Hull area, just south of Hull to Norfolk, how much he can cross there. And then places like Lyme Bay, the Bristol Channel, the Irish Sea, just how he's not going to have any control over the weather in those situations, whereas he did still have sort of, 5 days. This would have been forecasted. He would have had a rough idea of what might have been happening today. I'm pretty sure that Dougal would have done this crossing if he'd have had the weather. But I think he had some quite strong westerly winds, because he had an absolutely storming downwind into Fraserburgh, but he had to go further along the coast before it was safe for him to cross.
Yeah, so this will be cutting off a bit of distance there. Yeah, and we should say, you mentioned the stats, Billy, about how much Dougal was doing every day. So Sebastian's only 5 6 days in at this point, right? But his stats are already very impressive in terms of how much he's able to cover in a day. So over the first 4 days of paddling, because he took day 5 as a rest day, he's averaging 93.5 kilometers per day and 11.5 hours on the water, which is massive. 2 of those 4 days he did in 2 chunks. So sort of like a morning chunk and an afternoon chunk or an evening chunk, which presumably was to take advantage of the tides to some extent.
Yeah, he had to time Kyle Rea right, and then he also had to time the Penton Firth correct. Really, like absolutely spot on, and he did get them spot on. I think in other days, I spoke to Mike the other day, and he said he expects to see Sebastian take some absolutely huge days down this East Coast. Now that would be interesting to see. The East Coast is, I think, the easiest to land. Actually, Dougal and Mike both had tough times of the East Coast when you think it's going to be a bit easier. But from when I've looked at it, I've always thought, well, there's no major features along the coast that really stop you, like there is on the South Coast with the Portland race or Start Point. There's so many points along that South Coast where you need to get your timing right. And then again, on the West and then the North Coast, you've got those places where you absolutely need your timing to be spot on. I don't believe that there's so many places like that on the East Coast of England. It's hypothetically easier, for want of a much better word, but you can put in those big days if you need to.
Yeah, and he might need them as well, depending on, what the weather's going to do on the West Coast. Well, South and West Coast, right?
Yeah.
Because as you say, you might have less options there versus bad weather on the East Coast. You can kind of tough it out.
I mean, both Mike and Dougal crossed over to Ireland and went up the Irish coast. There's no guarantee that Sebastian will be able to do that. He might find himself creeping up Cardigan Bay. He might not be able to cross the Bristol Channel so far out. He might have to creep up the Devon Somerset coast a bit more.
Yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully the weather holds out for him. Definitely go take a look at his tracker. We actually have a video from Sebastian that he has shared with us. We asked him a few questions and to share some updates on how everything is going so far. So let's take a look and a listen to that right now.
How are you feeling so far? What has been the hardest physically and mentally?
Hello, everybody from Paddle Daily. Thank you, Betsy, for the interview, and hello to Billy. To begin the interview, I would like thank you very much to Mike Lambert. Without him, I wouldn't be here. I stepped myself in a surfski first time 9 months ago with Michael, and from there he helped me prepare for this event, and he's helping me now. Dougal, congratulations, and thank you for your tips too. So I'm feeling really good, like mentally 100%. My body is handling the mileage, so I'm feeling really good. I heard about how hard are those places that I passed already, but for $1 million, I would never go there again.
What is your plan, strategy for today's rest day and the next few days, including how do you plan to cross the Moray Firth?
So we have a 24 hours window to rest. We ate a lot. I had my first bath for the last 3 days, so I'm feeling really good, lighter like 3 kilograms. Now we'll do a lot of physio stuff, lay on a mat, then has some Theragun, then some massage, some complex. Then I'm going to sleep for a nap, eat again a lot. Planning to have a very good night of sleep, like 7-8 hours. And tomorrow about 9 o'clock, I want to do the 105 kilometers, just go all the way. And we see. I'm thinking just like Michael told me, just think one day ahead, don't run in front. So I'm just doing what Michael is telling me, and I'm feeling I'm handling. So doing good.
How has it compared to expectations so far?
I'm feeling much better than I thought I would feel in the first 4 days on my body. Mentally, I think I'm feeling better too, but there was times I didn't thought I would feel so much danger of the few places that I passed. The places I passed in the north of Scotland were more danger than I thought that there were. Or
What are your biggest concerns if something were to put you off track?
I'm just hoping the weather continues like that. I prepared for this, but still getting lucky. Like the main places I had the weather I needed to pass there. Tomorrow it will be. The prediction is for a good weather to do this 100K open water. I just hope to hit good weather and can paddle like almost every day. And my plan is to go at least 100K every day, and we see what happens.
The record is 40 days. So other than beating the time, do you have target for the number or days you are aiming to finish in? What is your schedule?
So I started with the objective to do under 40 days, but I'm not thinking anymore. I have no target. I want to do as fast as possible I can, and I would like thanks the support team. Without them, I wouldn't be here. Everything happens so much faster. To change, eat faster. I go to sleep faster. So I don't know how the guys did it without the support. Kudos, Michael, Dougal, just like big respect for you guys. I'm only on the beginning of my trip, for its 5th day. So just let's go forward. Keep punching. Regards to all the people in Bydgoszcz, Poland, and everyone from the world that likes kayaking, canoeing, every kind of water sports. So best regards to everybody. Follow my webpage, sebakayak.com, and most of the things we're putting on Instagram is Sebash81. So just follow and let's go.
That was great to hear from Sebastian about how everything is going.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Hearing him validate a few things like just how difficult that section of coastline in Scotland was, it does make me think, he probably was correct to do that first. Obviously, we'll see how the rest of the trip pans out. But I loved his comment, I wouldn't go back and do that again for $1 million.
I think Mike's time would have been a lot better if he didn't have that hard start location, which, absolutely fair play. That's, he had that for a reason. Dougal picked his start point. Sebastian has picked his start point. And I think that really gives you the opportunity to do a lot better.
Yeah.
Yes, it maybe looks like starting up in Scotland was the right for Sebastian, but like Dougal got around Scotland fairly trouble-free.
Yeah.
But it would have cost him extra days if he'd have got to the North Sea, not the North Sea, sorry, if he'd have got to the Thames estuary in the weather that he had at the end, it would have cost him like an extra 2 or 3 days. I could probably say like 5 places where you really have some pinch points around. There's probably loads, but 5 major ones that can really stop you for a long period of time or add significant days.
Yeah.
And, you have to pick one. You might think you've got the right answer, but you don't know until you look back with hindsight whether you really do you? I mean, if Mike had have started up in Scotland and he could have saved 10 days.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. Pentland Firth, obviously one of those. Thames estuary.
Irish Sea, Bristol Channel, Irish Sea. Lyme Bay can add a bit. If you manage to get past the Portland race and you can cross Lyme Bay in a oneer, that's pretty good.
Yeah. We did mention it last episode, but the fact that Sebastian has this on-land support crew, which Dougal and Mike did not have. They had wonderful, lovely, kind people on land who supported them at points by, doing things like cooking them dinner or buying them dinner at the pub, or, Mike was able to stay in someone's holiday home in Thurso. So there were many amazing, kind people who supported them, but they did not have dedicated land support crews. Sebastian does have that. We just saw, for anyone watching the video version, he's got his whole van in the background. He has 2 skis, a quicker ski and a more stable ski, so that he can kind of swap those out depending on the conditions. And just to, have other people on land who are there to do all of the kind of admin type bits for you. Really, like, the mental load of not having to worry about that cannot be overstated. So I think it's a huge advantage. And, you talk about sort of how the way that Dougal did this completely changed it from how it had been done previously by sea kayakers as maybe a little bit more of an adventure than a race. Maybe what we're seeing now with Sebastian doing it with land support is also kind of the next sort of phase of what we'll see for how people approach this circumnavigation.
Yeah, I mean, it can change. I think at one point Sebastian was going to do it with a boat, and very much like how Bonnie Hancock did Australia. Now, I personally, I think it would be a shame if that happened. I remember reading about John Willis's circumnavigation on his blog. I think this is very nearly a direct quote. Expedition rules: if you have a late finish, you get a lie-in. Now, you can't really do that now if you're trying to break the record. And John held the record for a week to 10 days until Joe Leach finished his circumnav.
Yeah. There's so many different ways to approach it, isn't it? We should say the circumnav of Australia is about 10 times harder than Britain. Not to diminish circumnavigating Britain at all, just to give everyone a little bit of a checkpoint as to how impressive Bonnie's circumnav truly was, which worth reading her book and film.
Yeah, I haven't read Bonnie Hancock's book, and I also haven't read Freya Hoffmeister's book, but apparently Freya's book is amazing.
I would like to read Freya's as well. I loved Bonnie's book. It's called The Girl Who Touched the Stars.
Yeah. I mean, that it's very cool. Freya's book, I mean, she slept on the kayak and put paddle floats on a paddle and strapped the paddle to the back of the canoe and slept on the boat as if it was like a crucifix or and she laid out. And I just can't. It blows my mind.
Freya is it's not even next level. She's like on her own, in her own stratosphere. She's definitely. Sebastian is much more of the race style, which is super fun to follow. So yeah, everyone follow along on Sebastian's tracker. We'll pop a link to that in the show notes. So let's move on to our regular programming, though, with the Marathon National Championships in South Africa.
These were held in Uppington on what looked like a really cool course. Nice beach portage, which they had to rebuild after flooding earlier in the season. They did a great format for their nationals. They had short course, long course, and then K2 long course. The short course men's, Hamish Lovemore won ahead of Andy Burkett. They were clear of the rest. In the ladies' race, Jade Wilson won a very tight sprint between her, Jenna Nesbitt, and Nix Burkett, finishing that order. Then onto the men's long course, Hamish Lovemore beat Yuli Hart in a sprint for the win. Those two were clear. The ladies' race, Jade Wilson won, and she was clear of Nix Burkett, who beat Jenna Nesbitt in the sprint for silver.
I know we've talked about Hamish Lovemore before, but he is really having such an outstanding season. And his wins in the South African Nationals here come on the back of his silver medal in the K1 1,000 meter race behind Olympic medalist Balint Kopas of Hungary at the Szeged Sprint Canoe World Cup a few weeks ago. he's really smashing it in both the sprint and marathon. Excited to see how he goes throughout the rest of the season in marathon at the World Games and the World Champs. And, hopefully we'll see him at the Sprint World Championships later this year as well, and heading into LA in 2028. And impressive from Jade Wilson, too. I think she's another one who's having a really great year. And we heard from Kira, about how she and some of those other top South African young women are looking to move from surfski into sprint, which, yeah, if you haven't listened to our interview with Kira Bester, the surfski world champion, definitely go listen.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that interview. The K2 was very interesting. It was really close. I think quite a big group went around for quite a while. The men's, the sprint for the medals went really close. Actually, it was really good and really good to watch this sprint, because it was an absolute masterclass by Hank of how to really drive a K2. Andy and Hamish won. Hank McGregor and Yuli Hart were second, with Clint Cook and Nick Notton in third. Now, Hank, I think, knew that they weren't going to win and really timed his sprint to perfection, surfing down Andy and Hamish's wave. And yeah, really masterclass of how to get second in a sprint that, I don't know, maybe they weren't going to get. If they'd have come off that wash, maybe that would have been Clint and Nick's silver medal.
Yeah.
But absolute masterclass in driving a boat there.
It was incredibly tight, and we'll pop the video of that into the video version of this episode so you can see it. Jade Wilson posted that on Instagram, and what a great sprint finish to watch. I'm really glad that she captured it on video.
Yeah, really good. And then in the K2, Pips McGregor won with Saskia Hockley driving the boat. They beat Jenna Nesbitt and Jade Wilson, who had multiple swims on the race from, we found out from their pre-race interviews, including one on the last portage, which I didn't see any videos of this finish, but it'd be interesting to know, how much that cost them.
Yeah, I think we've got the video of the swim on the portage, but not the video of the finish.
Yeah.
So it was, that portage where they did take the swim, it did look super, super close at that point. So yeah, hard to say how that might have turned out if they hadn't swum.
That's it from the world of marathon. But Betsy, you've been looking at some of the ultras this week.
I have. So last weekend was massive for the ultras, with 3 pretty big events going on. This was the Texas Water Safari, the Loire 725, and the Eliminator. So the Texas Water Safari, it is pretty legendary, but if you haven't heard of it, it is billed as the world's toughest canoe race, which is a bold claim, but one that, I will say, having spoken with people who've done it, it's certainly a candidate to deserve that title. It is 260 miles down Texas rivers filled with mosquitoes, log jams, alligators, and more. It is a wild race, and most people do it in a team. So there's a lot of tandem boats, and there is an unlimited category as well, where you can have essentially as many people as you want to in a team. I think maybe up to 6 in a boat, and the unlimited categories, and use whatever, canoe or kayak boat type that you would like. And those unlimited categories are often some of the most competitive. They also tend to attract some top names from the marathon canoe racing world in the US. So this would be people who are racing at the top level in the Triple Crown, which is the General Clinton Canoe Regatta, the Ausable River Canoe Marathon, and the Class C. There's some strong paddlers who do this race. And then we do also see people who go out and do it solo in canoe, kayak, and on stand-up paddle boards. Last year was a really big year because it had 2 SUP records that were set, and that was John Nippers, who set the SUP course record overall SUP course record. There's only a few people who've actually done the Texas Water Safari on a stand-up paddleboard. And John Nipper's record is 81 hours and 57 minutes. I'm going to give you a minute to kind of let that sink in.
Is there sleep involved in that time?
Yeah, I believe they will pull over to get naps here and there, because 81 hours, obviously a very long time to go with no sleep. But my understanding of the race rules is that it is pretty much self-determined. So you kind of sleep when you need to and when you can find somewhere safe to sleep. I don't think it has the same hard rules or checkpoints that we see in other races, like the Yukon River Quest or the Yukon 1000. And then also last year, Veronica Sosa became the first woman to finish the Texas Water Safari on a stand-up paddleboard. And so her women's record is 97 hours and 14 minutes. So another really long one. And John Nippers is a very experienced ultra paddler. So he's coming at it from that kind of experience. And Veronica Sosa is not only experienced in ultras, but she has done the Texas Water Safari many, many times. I believe she is local or local-ish to the course. And so she knew that incredibly well from doing it in, canoes and kayaks before she went down on a SUP. So unfortunately this year, no one completed the race on a SUP. At least as far as I could find out. And I don't know if they heard from John and Veronica how hard it was. Probably. But I did have a really incredible conversation with John after his race last year. So please do look out for that in your feed in the coming weeks to celebrate the anniversary of his record. And Veronica did the race again this year, not in SUP, of course. She raced in the Tandem Unlimited class in a C2 with Ryan Gillikin, and they came second in their class behind Megan Lowry and Carrie Gerber, who won the women's Tandem Unlimited class. Ryan Gillikin is the race director of the Sewanee 230, another ultra paddling race in the States.
How did Veronica's time in the C2 compare to her SUP time?
Yeah, a lot faster. So her record from last year on SUP was 97 hours, and this year she finished in 49 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd be doing it in a SUP again. I think easy to see why she got in a C2.
Yeah, she might not be back to defend that SUP record until it gets broken. So we'll see how long that takes.
How fast did the winners go?
The winning team, so this was a team of 6, and it did include some of the top talent in the marathon canoe racing world, which you can learn more about on the Canoe Race World podcast if you want to hear more about marathon canoe racing. So the overall winners were boat number 13 in 31 hours and 1 minute.
That's quite reasonable.
Yeah, a lot more reasonable than 80 to 100 hours that it takes on SUP, I think. And an impressive time. And that crew was Shannon Issendorf, William Russell, Chris Issendorf, Caitlin Minar, Kyle Minar, and Doug Yeager. And they won by more than an hour and a half. So a really solid margin there.
Nice. So what about the Loire 725? We mentioned it last week. And there were some questions about how the race was actually being run this year. They've made some changes, haven't they?
Yeah, so the Loire 725, 725 kilometers in France, is still really only a few years old. It seems to be kind of in its infancy as an ultra paddling race and evolving with that. So from what I understand, last year was not technically an official race and more of sort of an agreed upon, a nice group of paddlers getting together and going down the course at the same time, following some broadly agreed upon rules. This year, I think it was official, but what they did is instead of going straight through over 5 days like last year, they spread it out into 6 stages over 7 days. And from what we've been able to see and find, it seems like that has gone pretty well. So perhaps the race will kind of settle into the stages format going forward. It had a good mix of kayaks, canoes, and stand-up paddleboarders. There were 34 teams that finished, so that number includes individual racers. The overall winners were the K2 of Erwa Betano, Portugal, in 58 hours and 40 minutes. The overall solo winner was Daniel Silva in K1, also 58 hours and 40 minutes. And the overall SUP winner was Clovis Leroux in 62 hours, 27 minutes. And the women's at SUP winner and second SUP overall was Anat Zakidinas in 64 hours, 29 minutes.
That SUP was really close to the winning K2 and K1 time.
Yeah, it's really impressive from the stand-up paddleboarders. And our friends, the Tetsmann-Baum team, were competing as well in C2. I think they came second in the tandem category. Billy, you helped them out for DW, and I think you have asked them about how the race went.
Yeah, I met them 2 years ago, just before DW, helped them out with a little bit of a course recce, just showed them a few locks and what to expect on the first part of the course. They were lovely. They were great gals.
Team Tetsmann-Baum, Linda and Aneta, are probably some of the most experienced ultra paddlers out there, especially if we look at just the number and variety of ultra races they've done. So they may have been doing it for like a shorter time period than someone who's been doing it for, say, 30 years or something like that. But they have essentially targeted like almost every major ultra race around the world.
They won the Yukon a few years ago.
Yeah.
They go off and do Devizes to Westminster. They do the Ardèche. They set their calendar up early in the year, and they go around the world doing these cool races. I was following their updates on the Loire over the weekend on their Instagram page, and they very kindly provided us with a few updates via voice note about their race, and we can share those with you now.
This is Aneta Baum speaking.
And now Linda Tetsmann is speaking.
For us, it was the first ultra race with different stages, so that each day you could start with all the paddlers together and try to stay with the group, because if you stay alone in other races, you paddle most likely alone.
Yeah, coming together in the evening with rest of the paddlers, seeing each other, wishing all the luck for everyone. Atmosphere is great. To say about the Loire River, which is really beautiful, different stages as described, but also different water situations, some white water, some currents, some navigations between sand bars, also high wave coming in and going down. So all of this in one river, and also paddling through protected area was really nice experience and beautiful to see everything around. And as we paddled the canoe, it was also a different experience on a really long distance.
We are planning to go to Yukon 2000 race with the canoe. It can only be done in a canoe. So it was a preparational race for us to find out how we handle these long distances, to find proper seating position, good equipment, what technique we should paddle with, and everything. So very important part was to learn to navigate the river, because it's completely different on a canoe than on a kayak.
On a very personal level, the challenges started with my body. Seating position is very different in a canoe than in a kayak. In a kayak, I am used to it and I know how to be, how to feel. But now facing the different problems with my body. First of all, with my right shoulder, pain kicking in at the end of the first day in the evening. So facing this, then trying to find the paddling technique that I can hold my shoulder in a better condition. Also problems with my both legs, as I had accident 2.5 years ago when my calves got smashed. So blood circulation and everything is a bit complicated in these legs, and they cause pain if the blood circulation is not in a proper way. And in a canoe where the legs are more pointed downwards, this was really hard. So different dimensions of dealing pain on a body level. On a mental way, never had a thought in my mind that let's quit or I can't continue. I knew there is a way to release the pain. One way is known for everyone, I think, use painkillers, but these painkillers didn't even work with my legs. So it was on a mental level, how to release the pain, how to navigate it possibly in other area or better to release. So that was something definitely new. I also found a bit complicated in paddling sense in the beginning. Anette can guide you through that.
There were many ups and downs during the race, where one time you had energy, the other time not so much. And it was completely new for us to try to stay on other canoes wash. It was very difficult in the beginning, but we got much better at it.
And also paddling in a group where the different wash of different boats take you, how it affects a canoe. A totally new thing. Complicated in the beginning, we got better, definitely. So, overall, very powerful experience. I love the idea that we had our support crew around us that helped a lot. Also seeing others, but starting every day with other competitors, it's different than, for example, Yukon, where you don't see others. You start every day like a new race because there is a chance for everyone to catch up or to be with the leaders or try to do more. Everyone have ups and downs on different days. So very, very interesting.
So there's the Yukon River Quest, which is about 400 miles. There's the Yukon 1000, where you go from Canada to Alaska, the world's longest canoe race. And then the Yukon 2000 essentially is a challenge that you do the Yukon 1000 and then you just keep going. So it goes all the way to the sea. Yeah, pretty bonkers. I don't think many people have ever done this kind of course. Pretty cool that they're going to take it on. They're extremely experienced. They did the Yukon 1000, which is probably the best kind of qualification you can have to do the Yukon 2000. So looking forward to following along for that. Well, the third and final ultra from last weekend was the Eliminator, and I was there reporting on it for SUP Racer. It was a brand new ultra format in the backyard ultra style, which is, loops till you drop. It was a bit different than last paddler standing because it was for teams of 2 on stand-up paddleboard. And so you alternate with your partner every 30 minutes. And then there's these wild and wacky twists where you can use a wild card to change your order around between yourself and your partner. And at lap 13, the last paddler in each category starts getting eliminated. But then at lap 19, there's a lottery where someone from each category gets chosen to come back and then compete to try and remain in the race. So super unusual, super interesting format. It was a good time. The weather was tricky. There was a lot of side wind and cross chop, which meant a lot of people got eliminated really early on because they just weren't making their 28-minute time cutoff for coming back from each lap. So that was really challenging. I think that did have a big impact on just, how the race played out from there. Would have looked pretty different with calmer conditions, but pretty cool. And I really enjoyed just, getting to be there to see the first race of its kind. And the racers who were there, had a pretty good time. Some of them will be back. One of them has already gotten a tattoo of the race logo of the axe, which is another thing that makes this race unique. I think it is going to be in the calendar for next year pretty soon. So yeah, very cool. You can watch the whole drama unfold if you go to @SUPRacer on Instagram, and you can go to the stories highlight. And there's 100 stories there. You can see the entire action of the race unfolding. The category winners also won free entry into Race to the Castle and Last Paddler Standing for this year for Last Paddler Standing and next year for Race to the Castle. So Last Paddler Standing Classic Backyard Ultra, you can read about that on supracer.com, and pretty exciting race that I will be following later this year.
Yeah, it was good to watch, actually. I kept a loose tab on it over the weekend.
Yeah, interesting, unique, and fun. And speaking of SUP, last weekend was also the USA SUP and Surfing National Championships. The conditions looked absolutely epic. So these were out in California. And if you haven't seen the photos and footage yet, definitely go look that up. It was wild. So Soren Preston, who's one of the top juniors in SUP, who's based in California, actually managed to break her board in half on the technical race because the waves, they're just, it's beach starts and they're going out into like pretty significant waves and surf, and going out and doing a technical race, very much kind of, old school SUP racing, battle of the paddle style from the early days of SUP out kind of California and Hawaii, and not a lot of what we see with, on the Mediterranean, where we tend to have smaller surf, or, on some of the flatwater ICF racing. The results there, so Seychelles Webster won the women's technical race and the women's 10K distance race, followed by Soren Preston in both of those. That is Super Soren on Instagram. And Soren still finished the technical race. I believe she had to go back in and swap out her board.
You sent me the picture. There was no way she was finishing on that board.
No. I think she had to go back in and swap out her board to finish the race.
Okay.
The mentality to go out into that and then come back in with a board that's been snapped in half, swap it out and go back out into it again. And she's only, I think, like 16 or 17. Just really, really impressive. Soren is really one to watch if you're not following her already. And I believe that Seychelles and Soren were the only women to finish the technical race. There were 4 other women entered, and including Caitlin McElroy and Katniss Paris, who are both strong SUP racers. Caitlin's newer to SUP, but comes from a very strong kayak background. Katniss Paris is the reigning world champion in SUP sprinting. So they did not finish, and there were 2 women who didn't start the race for obvious reasons. And then we had Connor Baxter out in the men's race. So he won the technical. Always great to see Connor Baxter out there, huge SUP legend. And he actually finished like 3 or 4 minutes ahead of Campbell Carter, who's another strong paddler in the US. And that was flipped around in the distance race, where Campbell Carter beat Connor Baxter. So Campbell Carter was the overall winner of the 10K distance race, about 5 minutes ahead of Connor Baxter, followed by Seychelles and Soren. And those 2 were top 4. So, and that was the qualifiers as well for the ISA World Championships, assuming those get scheduled at some point. So if we ever see the ISA Worlds, then we should see Seychelles and Soren there for USA women.
There's still no word on
Campbell for the men. Still no word. Still only rumors. It is wild. perhaps we'll just continue to name and shame them until they get it scheduled.
I don't know if our podcast is going to be enough pressure on the ISA to...
Just gotta wait and see what they do. Upcoming this weekend in SUP is the Nordhausen SUP race in Germany. So this is the one of the races on the SUP EuroTour. The EuroTour events have like different star levels that tells you essentially how sort of big or relevant it is in impacting your ranking. And Nordhausen is a 3-star event, which is a little bit lower than some of the bigger races in Spain that we've spoken about over the last few weeks. So it does look like it might be a little bit smaller this year. I wasn't able to find the entry list. I did see that Donato Friends is entered. So he, I believe, will be defending his title from last year. Again, he's just been on a real streak of wins and podiums over the last few months. He's having a great season. I'm just not sure how much competition he'll have there. Blue Ewer finished behind him at Nordhausen SUP last year. And Blue is, I believe, currently in Japan for some downwinding with shrimping, which is what I spoke about with him the day after he won the GB SUP Nationals.
So he's just taken a trip to Japan just to do some downwinding with shrimpy?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
that's pretty cool, really, isn't it?
You could, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
Oh, it's super cool. Super cool. And
yeah.
It's also for the Okinawa, the O2Y race. So I think what they do is just hang out for a week of downwinding, and then it finishes with this O2Y race.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. Sign us up.
Yeah.
It sounds incredible. So, look out for that. And I'm not sure who's entered on the women's side for Nordhausen yet either, but we'll have to kind of follow that and report back. And then this weekend is also the European Sprint Canoe and Kayak Championships held in Racice, Czechia. It should be some really good sprint racing there. It looks like the attendance and competitiveness is a bit lower than some of the recent World Cups. Obviously, it's only the Europeans. So we are missing major names from other regions like Katie Vincent from Canada in women's canoe and Amy Fisher from New Zealand in women's kayak. Last year's results were from an Olympic year where the event was a really nice kind of pre-Olympic warm-up for some of those Olympians who were headed to Paris. But still some big names who are going to be there this year. It'll be home turf for Martin Fuchse and Joseph Dostal, who, of course, are both from Czechia. So I think they are going to have massive cheering home crowds. Fuchse has been having a great season. I believe he is unbeaten in the C1 1,000 meters. Joseph Dostal, I think we could see some good results from him. His biggest competition will be Balint Kopash, who got silver last year behind Ole Urania of AIN. Fernando Pimenta is going to be there. He's coming off 2 gold medals from marathon Europeans we covered last week. And Jakob Thordsen of Germany will also be there. John Bold, who was at the marathons, Archer Peters. Yeah, could be some good racing in the K1 men's race.
Yeah, the A final will certainly be rammed.
Yeah, and then in the women's race, I think there should be some pretty good racing there as well. So Zoka Chicos of Hungary, we talked about her in the last couple of Sprint World Cups. She has been having an outstanding season, as has Anna Polaska of Poland. So I'm excited to see them face off again in the 500-meter race. Last year, it's going to be a new podium because last year's gold medalist at Europeans was Tamara Chibas of Hungary, and silver was Emma Jorgensen of Denmark. Emma Jorgensen has retired, which we've spoken about a bit. We do have some upcoming Danish paddlers, maybe, who will continue her legacy. Let's see. She's left some big shoes to fill. And Tamara Chibas, I think she seems to be taking a bit of time out. I don't think she has retired. I think she's still paddling, but I think from what I understand, she just seems to be not competing at the same level this year. So we could still see her competing in this Olympic cycle. So yeah, it'll be new. Milica Novakovic of Serbia was the bronze medalist last year, and she is going to be racing this year in the 500 meters. So she could be one to watch. Herman Peters, Belgium, and Selma Koning of the Netherlands had a standout performance in Poland.
Coached by Sebastian's dad.
Ah, really?
I believe so.
That's pretty cool. Well, obviously he's a good coach. So, and he coached the Brazilian Olympic team, which was why Sebastian competed when he went to the Olympics. So.
Well, and then he's had great success with the Dutch team in the last couple of years, getting quite a small hub of paddlers, but getting some really great results.
That's pretty impressive. So let's definitely watch out for Salma Konin. And then in the canoe, yeah, so I think Martin Fuchsa is going to be really hard to beat. We will have Tarnowski, Glaznov, Chirilla, Ticini, all competing, who are top end names in C1. It seems that you only get one entry per country, which means we won't see Gabriel Cassidy, the young C1 man, racing in C1, but he will be racing in C2 with Carlo Tacchini. So they'll probably do really well in C2. Cassidy had some really strong performances in the last couple of World Cups. And, I think he'll still be one to look out for. And in the women's C1, Dorota Borowska of Poland will be back to defend her title from last year. She'll have competition from Kinso Takash of Hungary, Victoria Yurchevska, Beth Gill of GB. So Yurchevska was the really young Spanish woman who was she had kind of a shocking performance, really demolishing the field in the 200 meters at the second World Cup. So it'll be, she didn't go to Poland, so it'll be interesting to see if she can pull that off again now in Czechia. And in para, lots of representation for Team GB as usual. So we'll have the pleasure of watching Laura Sugar in the KL3, Charlotte Henshaw, KL2, Hope Gordon, BL3, Charlotte Henshaw also in BL3, and then some of the GB men too, Dave Phillipson, Ed Clifton, Jack Ayers is going to be there, Olympic medalist from Paris as well in the BL3. And then some of the biggest competition will be Serhiy Milanov of Georgia. He's in the KL3 men. We just saw him win the marathon Euros in para, which was really great to see him go from sprint to marathon, now back to sprint. He's a very impressive athlete. And Yepifanov Vladislav of Ukraine in the VL3 men. And Peter Kiss of Hungary in the KL1 men. So definitely some big names to watch out for in the para racing as well. I think we should see pretty tight, pretty good racing with that kind of selection of names. A lot of Paralympic medalists there.
Yeah. Did Jack just do the DW prize giving?
He did, yeah. Yeah, Jack Ayers is I'll say local-ish, a couple hours south of London. And he won, I think it was a silver medal at the Paralympics in Paris a few months ago, and races in outrigger canoe as well on the sea over longer distances. And he was one of the presenters at the Devices to Westminster prize giving ceremony, which I think was last weekend.
It was, yeah. I didn't go.
Yeah, it happened a few months after the DW race itself, I think, just because they've got all of the trophies and sort of traditionally how it's been done. I did see Kat Wilson on crutches. I think she must have had her knee surgery.
Yeah, she did, actually. She said it's gone really well.
Good. Well, we'll be following the racing this weekend and reporting back again next week. And keep an eye on your feed as well for our interview with Paolo Marconi. So be sure to listen to that one. That is a really, really good chat. And Paolo has written a book about SUP and about ultra paddling. and it's really, I think anyone would enjoy his book. So we had a really fantastic chat with Paolo that we have been really excited to get into your ears, not to your screen. So please do check that out.
Yeah, Paolo's a cool guy.
Yeah, it was such a good chat. Until next time, see you on the water.
See you on the water, everyone.